Hello, and welcome to Leadership Trail Mix. I am Miguel Oliveira, and for the next few minutes, we'll be together looking at one of the main ingredients that compose this art and science we call people leadership. My guest today is Stephen Shed Shedletzky, author of the book Speak Up Culture, host of the Shed Some Light podcast. He's also a leadership speaker, facilitator, and coach. Shed is in a mission to empower leaders to cultivate psychologically safe and healthy cultures, which couldn't be more aligned to what Leadership Trail Mix is all about. Shed, welcome to Leadership Trail Mix. Should we get started?
Let's do it. Thank you so much for having me, Miguel.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I think the first question starts with a little disclaimer. People who listen to Leadership Trail Mix know that I love definitions. And even though I've been in this journey for about 2 years now, I don't think I've ever shared a definition of leadership itself. So I'd love to start there. How do you define leadership?
Yeah, so I think it is really important to use definitions, especially with something as important as leadership, because if we don't have a common or standard definition, how are we to do a job well? And so as I've worked in this body of work of leadership development, for me, it's been close to 20 years.
Wow.
Only recently have I thought of, wait a second, what do we mean by leadership? And so for me, my current working definition is this. Leadership is the attempt to leave the people and the world around us better than when we have found them.
Wow.
Leadership is not a title. Leadership is a set of behaviors. I used to say there are good leaders and there are bad leaders. Who am I to judge? I'm not holier than thou. And so for me, leadership is an infinite game. We never arrive. We are always arriving. That's why it is an attempt. And sometimes despite our best attempt, we mess it up or we misinterpret or whatever it might be because we are human and fallible. And better for me takes the subjectivity that is inherent. Like the only true test of leadership is anyone choosing to follow. And so if you see that someone is behaving in a way, making decisions, has a version or vision of the future that you go, yep, I want to move toward that, or they offer you some sort of safety, security, prosperity, alignment with cause, whatever it might be, you choose to follow. And you choose to align with their version or vision. You choose to contribute to their version or vision of better.
I love that. Such an inspiring definition. Thank you. And you remind me of something I heard from Brene Brown recently where someone asked her, do you love who you are today? And she said, I love who I am becoming, which kind of talks to this concept that you just shared about it's not a selfie, right? It's really about the journey and less about the destination, if you will.
For sure. And in any given moment as a human being, we are both awe-inspiring and fallible all at once.
Yeah.
And so I love that answer because it denotes that I'm proud of where I am, and yet I know there's more in the future. I know there's more to go, and there always ought to be.
I love it. Thank you. Switching gears a little bit, there is a quote you posted on LinkedIn recently that I would love to unpack and understand how much it connects with your definition of leadership. The quote says, and here I quote, when the human in me sees the human in you, we make progress, which actually reminds me of a quote by Carl Jung, know all the theories, master all the techniques, but as you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. Can we talk about it all?
Oh, how much time do you have? I mean, if there is ever one quote that I think should guide our existence as human beings, it's a mixture of those two. When I use that quote, when the human, I think I actually said it, when the human in me sees the human in you, we make progress. It establishes that despite our diversity and our differences, you and I have heartbeats. You and I have souls. And yes, we are biologically wired for our own safety, longevity, to notice difference or to be weary of stranger or to find commonality. And so I think in such a divided world that we live in, politically, algorithmically, in our experience, we all have the opportunity to do the work of, even if I don't know Miguel, even if I may not agree with everything that Miguel holds as true,
Yep.
I can still show up with compassion, with curiosity, with care, with respect. You and I can disagree and come out the other end better, stronger, and with respect. And we need that. We need that. A brilliant person who's doing amazing work on this is Dia Khan. She has a book called, I believe, a documentary called White Right Meeting the Enemy.
Huh.
She's a Muslim woman from the UK, and she decided to travel over to the US and happened to meet members of the white nationalist group
Wow.
on the day before Charlottesville, and she joined and marched with them as press, not knowing what she was walking into.
Wow.
But she ended up developing deep, meaningful relationships and friendships with people who said to her, every moment of my life up until now, I've been told, trained, indoctrined, and raised my hand to hate you. But you have treated me with more respect and humanity than people that I call brothers and sisters. And they literally had a crisis of identity and left the very party that spews hatred. And so, yeah, it is a quote that inspires me and a quote that I don't nail all the time, but I strive to live my life in that way, to lead with curiosity and compassion and respect above all else.
That's great. And I think it really connects to another concept, which is the concept of nurturing. You talk about nurturing the voices of others, and I would love to understand what you mean by that. Or I think, in other words, more than understanding what you mean, I would love to understand how can we as leaders nurture the voices of others?
Yeah, so nurturing the voice of others is a key tenet to what it means to be a part of and contribute to a speak up culture. And that's the book that I wrote, and a body of work that I dearly believe in and have devoted my life's work to helping advance. Nurturing voice means that I show up in a way that makes it psychologically safe and worth it for you to share your voice, what you see, what you feel, what you know. That could be spoken voice, that could be written, whatever transmission of your voice. And when you share that, you feel encouraged to do so, that you go, the risk that it'll take, the vulnerability, the judgment, or maybe you don't feel those things and you just feel that you're encouraged to speak up. The second piece then is, are you rewarded? That when you share an idea, you offer me feedback to help me or our relationship grow or our work together grow. You share a concern. When I talk about speak up culture, often it's like, oh, well, people complain all the time. It's like, well, at least they're complaining to your face.
That's right.
That's more productive than complaining behind your back. That's actually a sign that you're probably doing more things right rather than wrong. And you can lean into it with curiosity and see, can we take that concern or complaint and turn it into a commitment together, right? We can disagree. I think one of the greatest myths of psychological safety in a speak up culture is we get along all the time and agree upon all the things. The true test and strength of a speak up culture is in the quality of our dissent, of our debates, of our disagreements. And inside of a speak up culture, we can admit mistakes as well, knowing it will lead to improvement, not being ignored and not being punished. There might be consequence, but not being punished. And so when we nurture voice, we encourage folks to speak up and we reward them for doing so. And reward is far more intrinsic than extrinsic, Miguel. It's not bonus, pay raise, promotion, statue made in your honor out in front of corporate headquarters. All those things, except for maybe the statue, might happen.
Yep.
Reward is far more intrinsic. Thank you. That must have taken courage. I don't yet see what you're pointing out. Can you share more? I've both challenged, disagreed, but given you more airtime. We didn't implement your idea. Here's why. We did implement your idea. Here's what happened. These are all forms of intrinsic reward that signal to us and the people around us that the choice, the risk at times it takes to use our voice is worth it. And when that is shown, voice is nurtured and voice can spread positively.
Oh my gosh, so many thoughts in my mind right now, Shed, because I think you're the first person that I hear articulate the concept of reward beyond recognition, but also as acknowledgement. Sometimes people just want to feel like, oh, you actually heard. Thank you. Oh, that's what you're going to do with it. You're not going to do anything with it. Okay, thanks
Yes.
for letting me know at least. And I think sometimes we kind of we lose that. It's like, if I'm not doing what you're asking from me, it's probably going to feel more like a punishment. So I'd rather not tell you anything.
Totally, totally. There's someone close to where you live in Colorado named Zach Mercurio, who has a great book on the power of
I
mattering.
love that.
I love Zach as well, and our work marries so well together because there's such a link between mattering, making someone feel as though their very presence and being, their work matters, with the speak up culture. So much of nurturing using voice is, we don't need to validate everything someone says for someone to still be validated in their existence and in their voice. So it's that.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Um, and talking about speak up cultures, one thing that I think sometimes we ignore is what I call workplace trauma. So people come to you, and no matter how many times you as a leader do everything that you can to create that speak up culture, there are still people that choose not to, because there's something about overcoming the fear of speaking up, even when that's the culture around you. What have you seen work for people who, even though they are told, and even though the leader is doing everything they can, they're still making the choice of kind of holding back? Is there a path to kind of enable and help them get there?
Yeah, so you're so right that we always walk into any scenario with like our emotional or psychological safety or speak up culture backpack. And the highly emotionally intelligent of us are aware, oh, that's my backpack on. That may not be what's actually happening, but
Uh,
still there's a backpack. And so I think, all you can do is continue to commit to creating a speak up culture for them. If if they can't step in, they have work themselves that they need to do to take themselves on and grow. You can support with that work, but you can't do that work for them.
uh,
Um, One of my favorite examples of this is the Korean Airlines cockpit. So Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this in his book Outliers, where the Korean culture is very subservient, very respectful to hierarchy. Even in the Korean language has hierarchy built into it.
oh, wow.
And so that's fine for your father-in-law, not so good if you're the pilot of a plane and have 285 souls behind you that you're responsible from getting to point A to point B. And so there's issues where at most a more junior pilot would only lightly suggest that
Uh,
maybe we should consider de-icing. And if the captain's like, no, we're good, even though they saw ice on the wing, right? And so they trained them on how to follow protocol and policy, how to create a speak up culture. And they also no longer speak Korean in the Korean
oh,
Airlines cockpit.
wow.
They speak English. Because when you get into that cockpit, we are now in a new, I call it culture pickle brine. We're in a
Uh-huh.
new pickle jar, right? And where I might treat you a little bit differently outside of the cockpit and in our Korean culture, but inside the cockpit, I'm willing to break the culture and the code for the sake of something bigger: safety, well-being, point A to point B.
Uh,
And so know that culture is like a pickle jar, and sometimes the people don't behave the way that you want them to, but that has less to do who they are with it has less to do with who they are as cucumbers and more on who they are to do with what's in that brine. And so yes, people do bring their psychological safety, speak up culture, emotional backpack in, but you can shift it
uh,
with consistency. Um, but after repeated attempts and it's not working, there's some work that someone needs to do to take themselves on, because objectively, it is a speak up culture for the vast majority of a diverse team. If it isn't for them, it might be that they need to take some work on themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's funny because I I almost feel like we probably need to talk about trains, because you talked about planes, and now I'm going to talk about automobiles, right?
Okay. I
So
love it.
the next question is about something you posted recently. And as you know, I'm from Brazil, and only once before moving to the US, I drove an automatic car. Um, and it was not a very pleasant experience. For almost 15 years, I drove manual cars. And it's funny because even though I've been living here in the US for almost 8 years now, and I've always driven automatic cars. See, when I go back home, I have no problem getting back to manual. And those listening to us are probably scratching their head and asking, where on earth is Miguel going with this whole car thing? And I'm glad you all asked, because Shed recently posted a reflection online about leadership being more like driving shift. And I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yes. Well, it's like riding a bike once you get behind that clutch and gear shifter. So rock on. For me, when it comes to speaking up, using our voice, or being a leader, really, I lean into the platinum rule, not the golden rule. So the golden rule is like an automatic transmission. The golden rule is what I teach my 6-year-old. Treat people the way you wish to be treated. It's basic common respect. And like, that's bare minimum. But if we're to be an effective leader, and if we're to be effective at when we choose to speak up and use our voice, we should lean into the platinum rule and the fact that we can be manual transmissions. The platinum rule is to treat people not as we wish to be treated, but to treat people as they wish to be treated. We don't need to bend ourselves into pretzels. We can still be authentic to who we are, but work on, okay, how can I say this or speak up or present this information or data or opinion or whatever in a way that Miguel or my team or my leader or insert person, how they can hear it? And this is why we have Myers-Briggs and DISC assessments and all these tools that teach us others' preferences so that we can try to meet them where they are so that we can be heard. So this is what I mean by leadership in a speak up culture. We should lean into our manual transmission. We should pick which gears we should use to transmit our communication in a way that it will be received well and heard.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Shed, you said earlier, like, how long do I have? I could be here for another 2 hours, but this episode is supposed to be short. So we're going to have to get to an end. And as I always ask my guests, what is one call to action that you would like to leave us today? Something that we can start doing immediately to be better people leaders for those we have the honor to serve.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Two things come to mind. One is an awareness that as a leader, and I use the word leader, both capital L leader as well as lowercase l leader. A capital L leader has the title of leadership: manager, director, VP, C-suite. It is literally in your job title that you are formally responsible for the performance and well-being of the people around you, the people in your span of care and trust. And so, as well as a lowercase leader is, you may not have the title, but you have the behavior, because leadership is a set of behaviors: decisiveness, compassion, confidence, hopefully accountability, right? These are some of the attributes, behavioral attributes of what it means to be a leader or someone worth following. So there are capital L, there are lowercase l. If you are a capital L, know that you have authority. Know that your jokes get more laughs, even if you aren't that funny.
Yeah.
And if you are a lowercase l leader, know that you have influence as well. Even if you don't have the title, people listen and people follow. And as a leader, capital L or lowercase l, your whisper is a shout and your tiptoes are stomps.
Wow.
We're a hierarchical species. We're a species of influence as well. And just know that this is not a call for perfection, but your words and your actions bear weight, and bear more weight than others who have less influence or less title. The other thing that I would just say is that every single human being has access to this special superpower, and the superpower is curiosity. And you don't even need to be genuinely curious to exercise it. You can just ask good, open-ended questions and listen and see what comes back, and allow yourself to be fascinated. Like the number of times, especially when I'm in a coaching conversation or working with a client or talking to my kid or my spouse or a dear friend, and I'm like, I know what they're going to say, or I know what they're thinking. But I listen to my mentor, Michael Bungay-Stanier, who's a great author, and he says, because he's Australian, he goes, stay curious just a little bit longer. And I ask one more open-ended question, and I'm always floored, because typically my assumption isn't right. Typically there's more to the story, or there's something deeper. And so know that the gateway to curiosity is open-ended questions, and we all have access to them.
That's beautifully said, Chad. That's definitely a wrap, a mic drop, whatever we want to call it. Thank you so much. Stephen Shed Shedletzky, thank you so much for being a guest here on Leadership Trail Mix.
Thank you, Miguel. A joy to join you. Hope it's helpful for your listeners. Good luck on the trail.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For those listening to us, I hope you learned as much as I did. You can always reach out to share your thoughts. Just email me at miguel@leadershiptrailmix.com. Thank you for listening, take care, and talk soon.